What's up, Buffalo Bills fans, Buffalo Sabres fans, YouTubers out there? This is Ryan Thomas. You're tuning in live to the Thomas Takes Sports Podcast, and I'm very excited to bring you another edition of the Thomas Take per usual. Coming to you live from the house, and I'm very excited. I got some new digs, obviously a new mic, connected to the laptop here. Obviously, hopefully that brings better audio quality for all the listeners and viewers out there that are tuning into the show, as well as, and for the visual viewers, you can visually see holding up the TTSP mug, front logo, my logo, the T ring logo, and obviously the Buffalo logo. I like the Buffalo logo. I really do, with the writing underneath it. That excites me. That makes things fun. So very excited to join you live as I take a swig here of some Arnie and say that I'm very excited to bring you another edition of the Thomas Take Sports Podcast as well. Obviously, this one is a Buffalo Bills edition, per usual. I enjoy talking about the Buffalo Bills just as much as anybody. I think I enjoy it more than any human being that's ever walked the face of this earth. Maybe that's a little bit of an over exaggeration, but time and time again, people that know me, people that have met me, know how passionate I am about this team and how passionate I am about these fans, how passionate I am about my podcast. Constantly working towards making this podcast bigger and better each and every day. And wise man once said, if you have a dream, don't just dream it, do it. And life is a garden, dig it. That was Joe Dirt. The first one I think was Martin Luther King. So obviously Martin Luther King, I'll take his quote all day over Joe Dirt's. But anyways, to say the least, I'm very excited to hop on here on the Thomas Take YouTube channel and talk about the Bills again. Talk about the Buffalo Bills for obvious reasons. I've been on the show multiple times and I've talked about how I do not want the Buffalo Bills to trade up for a quarterback. And the reason why I've had to make that a real emphasis on my show is that I don't want to make it I don't want to make it a point to go out and get a quarterback. I don't want to make a point, meaning going out and getting a quarterback and getting a quarterback that I think is lackluster, getting a quarterback that I think is lackluster in terms of trading up to get one. And what I mean by that is there are some solid quarterbacks in the 2018 NFL draft. There is no doubting that. There is no doubt about it. But trading the quote unquote farm to go get a quarterback when we don't necessarily have to is a huge issue to me. And what I mean by not necessarily have to, I could kind of parlay that into saying we have plenty of other needs at this juncture with the Buffalo Bills in comparison to that, to maybe in comparison to taking a quarterback. We got plenty of other needs. Those other needs consist of linebacker, offensive line, and they obviously consist of quarterback. They obviously consist of wide receiver. Some would even say they consist of running back. We don't know how long LaShawn McCoy is going to be around. And they'd obviously consist of literally everything. Every which position you look at, you could say, hey, I think that this is the direction that the team should go in based on the fact that I think that they need depth. I think they need depth. I don't think they need depth. I know they need depth because last year when some players went down, things got a little bit dicey for the Buffalo Bills and things were a little bit too close to call. What I mean by that is putting in players at starting positions that do not belong in starting positions, that belong in the league on the other 31 teams as backups. Most of those guys are gone. Some of those guys are gone that I didn't want to be gone. Some of those guys are still out there that I don't want to be gone. Leonard Johnson, I thought, was a solid bill last year, and he's still out there as a corner. But based on the visits, based on where Buffalo has obviously looked in terms of trading and making things happen, they're not trading, but scouting and making things happen, with these particular players. I think that they're really looking at this thing all hands on deck. Let's not leave one stone unturned, and let's go for it. Let's make something happen with our team, not with trading up and getting a quarterback. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe come April 26th, we will see them trade up and take a quarterback. And I'm not saying I'll be really, really mad if they choose to go that route. I trust Brandon Beane and Sean McDermott in their evaluations of the team. I trust those two guys more than any other Bills regime of years past, to say the least. So, all in all, why do Bills fans want them to trade up? They want them to trade up because they've never done it before. They've never moved into the top 5 as an NFL franchise and have traded up to take a quarterback. They've never done that. 1983, they took Jim Kelly. Jim Kelly was a 14th overall pick. 2004, they traded up to take J.P. Lossman. J.P. Lossman was the 22nd overall pick. 2013, they traded up. They took E.J. Manuel. He was the 16th overall pick. So they've never done that before. And that's something that I think kind of tickles the fancies of Bills fans out there. The thought of them making that big move finally for a quarterback. This is the draft to do it. They feel they have the picks to do it. They feel I get that. I understand that. But at the same time, getting that and understanding that is two entirely different things when you look at the wide span of the roster. When you look at the fact that Richie Incognito, quote unquote, retired, when you look at the fact that Eric Wood retired, when you look at the fact they just traded Cordy Glenn, who was the most unavailable lineman on that team. I'm not saying it's a huge loss. I'm just saying that it is a loss in general. You have to throw that out there. The left tackle will look different. The guards will look different. They only have one returning quote unquote starter from last season, and that is Deion Dawkins that started the majority of the games at left tackle in Cordy Glenn's absence. So there's some room for improvement there for sure. They signed Russell Bodine. They signed Marshall Newhouse. Both guys have started games in the National Football League. Both guys have shown glimpses of being solid offensive linemen, and they've also shown glimpses of not being solid offensive linemen. They're fringe linemen at this point. We don't know if they're starters yet. So to say the least, that is an area of need. Linebacker, right now, Lorenzo Alexander, Sean Milano, and Ramon Humber are around. They obviously have some other bodies, but nobody to really, no one that really jumps out at you. Tanner Vallejo, who they drafted, he's still on the team. But their linebacking core definitely needs to be improved, especially in this particular defense, a defense in which I think Sean McDermott is looking to make his stamp on it. I said that last year. He started that with Trey White. And he started that in some ways with the signing of Eddie Yarborough, with the way he played in the early going of the season last year and filling in for Shaq Lawson periodically. There's a lot of very, very interesting layers to this team that not many fans have really taken into consideration. I'm not saying it to badger them. I just want to say that to bring light to these situations as a fan and as a sports writer, that help them understand why they might not trade up to take a quarterback, and prepare them for the thought, for the idea that they might not, because I don't want Bills fans to be let down. I know I will not be let down. Me specifically, I will not be let down if they decide to go in a different direction. If they decide to make a the 12th overall pick a corner. They decide to make the 12th overall pick a linebacker and the 22nd overall pick a quarterback. That doesn't mean, I'm not saying I don't want them to take a quarterback. I'm saying I would not be hurt in the slightest if they went another route, if they went into another in another direction. That would not hurt me in the slightest. That would not hurt me one bit. So, to say the least, I'm excited for this draft, but I'm not going into this draft with the same thought process as everybody else. I'm going into this draft thinking, let's maximize our picks, let's get as many players as we possibly can, and let's make this team better than it's been in a long, long time. We're coming off a 9-7 playoff season where it wasn't supposed to be a playoff season. We made the playoffs with a quarterback that is not the best passer in the world. We made the playoffs with a quarterback that was very conservative with the football. Now we have a quarterback that is a good passer and makes things happen with the football in his time that he has started in this league. So, on paper, as of now, AJ McCarron's the dude until further notice. Nate Peterman, I've talked about not hating on him. I believe in him. I think that he was thrown into a crappy situation and he made the best of it. Even though it wasn't a great performance, he did the best with what he had and reacted to it in a very high character way. And I delved into that with Samuel White on the podcast a couple nights ago. But realistically, I think that this team has every reason to build upon what they already have and building the strengths, making the strengths even stronger. Johnny G, saw you called me earlier, buddy. I was on here. Would you be surprised if they don't select a quarterback in the first round? Not necessarily. I think in the second round they might, but maybe once they get past that first round and they don't see a guy there, maybe there'll be a guy there that they have more interest in. What I'm referring to, maybe they lose their interest in a quarterback if they don't get one of the first round guys, or maybe they delve into it in the second round or maybe the third round. Are there franchise quarterbacks at that point in this class? You never know. Did they say that there were franchise quarterbacks in, the fourth round with Dak Prescott or with Russell Wilson or with TB12? The draft is one of the biggest anomalies. The NFL draft specifically is one of the biggest anomalies in sports history, I think. And that's what makes it so exciting, because you have so many players to choose from that someone's bound to slip through the cracks. You don't know what you have. You can watch as much game tape. You can watch as much. You can read browse as many statistics as you want. But until you're there, come June, July training camp, you have no idea what this guy is going to bring. You have no idea what this guy's going to be able to bring to the table, and that is what scares teams off in making moves for quarterbacks. And let's just say they trade 2 first-round picks and 2 second-round picks. Nobody, not me, not any writer or fan out there, nobody can honestly tell me who the best quarterback in this draft is. Everybody has a different opinion, and they have different reasons for that. And that alone, the fact that people have different opinions and different takes as to who is the best quarterback in this draft, I think that lends itself to my argument that there is not an Andrew Luck in this draft, that there is not a John Elway or a Peyton Manning in this year's draft. If there was, people would be flying up the board to get him. The Browns would have probably already traded the pick already for plenty of other firsts and seconds and whatever. There's plenty of teams in this year's draft that have 2 first-round picks that need quarterbacks, and believe it or not, New England is one of them, based on the fact that, we know very well that TB12 is not going to play till he's 50 like he thinks he is. It's just not going to happen. If it does, then he's a revelation of modern science. I don't think that's going to happen, but I hope, at least I hope. But to say the least, I think that this team has a lot of intriguing selections that they can make. And one of those selections is Dante Jackson. I talked about that in one of the last podcasts with the draft visits. Dante Jackson runs a 4.32 40. He's a little bit smaller, kind of like a 5'9, 5'10 guy, thin frame. But man, can he fly, and he can cover, and he can defend the ball pretty well. I like him because he went to DBU. He played with Trey White. I think Sean McDermott really wants to put his fingerprints on this defense. I said that last year, and the first round pick that they traded down to acquire with the Chiefs, um, was Trey White. Johnny Goldsmith says, I think there might be as much urgency given the fact that McCarron is in the fold. There might be as much urgency. You think there's more urgency now that McCarron's in the fold? That's interesting. Now, I don't disagree with it, but that's interesting. My take on McCarron, Johnny knows me very well. Originally when I had heard that McCarron was getting thrown around here, I thought, oh boy, I don't know. I don't know if this is going to work. I don't know if this is what I want them to do with their team. But really, I think that out of all the quote unquote veteran options that there were, I'm glad they got him because he's one of the youngest veteran options. He did things the right way, quote unquote, right way in Cincinnati by sitting and learning behind Andy Dalton. And he made as much out of a backup situation as he possibly could. He started a playoff game, actually played pretty well in that playoff game. I just watched it a few days ago. I thought he did really well. I also thought that the situation in Cincinnati was bound to end. Whether Cincinnati was going to choose Dalton or him was the question. And he filed the grievance. He filed the grievance with the NFL, and he won. He won that grievance. So that allowed him to that allowed him to make it happen with the Bills. I'm happy he fell into our lap. In that aspect, when I think of it that way, I'm happy he fell into our lap rather than Miami or New England, who was really interested in him, and that was real. That wasn't fake news. He said there's not as much urgency. Yeah, and I would agree with that. I actually, over the coming days after that signing, I thought, okay. They have McCarron, they got Nate, two guys that have throwing ability. Nate's just gotta, iron some stuff out, obviously, but I'm not really against the idea of seeing one of those guys start or seeing them battle it out or seeing McCarron just get the starting job and Peterman be the QB2. If they can't get a quarterback in the first round, my thought is maybe they won't take one in the second or third. Maybe they'll take one in the fourth or the third, maybe. There's guys like Mike White that are getting thrown around, Sean Lauletta, Luke Falk, very raw quarterbacks that aren't as polished, as they say, as a Rosen or as a Darnold, but guys that definitely can earn their keep if they're molded right. That's a big if. But I mean, you look at recently, within the recent days, a guy was signed by the name of RG3. He was signed by the Baltimore Ravens as Joe Flacco's backup. Realistically, at one point, I would have taken RG3 over Joe Flacco, and I have no shame in saying that. He was an electrifying rookie. He made the most of his opportunity with the Eagles early on. Changed the game really at that time with the option quarterbacks. He had RG3, you had Cap, you had Russell Wilson, but I think RG3 actually that season 2012 was the best out of all of them. And Kaepernick played in the Super Bowl that year, if I'm not mistaken. Russell Wilson obviously had success right away as well, but RG3 was just the most Vic-like quarterback that I had seen. And Washington gave up a hell of a lot to get him. And in that same draft, they drafted Kirk Cousins, who they let go, for nothing. They let RG3 go for nothing. So, that's how that situation ended. But that was actually a very brilliant decision there by the Redskins to make that move, to make that happen, due to the fact that the Redskins definitely needed two quarterbacks. They needed to find out who their dude was. And they found out who their dude was. If Buffalo wants to take a quarterback 12th or 22nd, then takes another one in the 4th round, and we enter training camp at St. John Fisher with me standing on the sideline with 4 quarterbacks, I would be pretty damn happy. Lord knows that. It'd give me something to watch. I'd get my popcorn ready on the sideline and have a good time. That would be fun. 4-man open quarterback competition. I want open competition every year. I don't want it to be dead set as to who's the starter until that dude really does something special, really fires on all cylinders for us, and we know that he's the franchise dude. Right now, we don't have that dude. But until then, I want open competition at every position, whether it's quarterback or left tackle, running back. I mean, let's be real. We know what the situation is with that. They got Shady, who's probably going to be 30 as a running back at 33 or 34 rather than at 30. What I mean by that is he's still got some juice left in those legs. He's still got the ability to cut. He can still play very well in very bad weather. Man, he's a nice guy to have on this team. Very fortunate to have that. And the fact that we have a guy at tight end that I think has been heavily underutilized. And I say underutilized, and most Bills fans say underutilized, but he's been targeted a lot. He just hasn't had the right quarterback thrown to him, and that's Charles Clay. I really like Charles Clay. I think he could be really useful in an offense. I'd use him in so many ways. Lord knows I do in Madden, but I'm talking real life too. I'm talking real life too. There's so many ways to use that guy. Could use him as a fullback, as a running back, as a tight end, as a deep route receiver. I mean, he has so many tricks up his sleeve with his skill set. I hope we see a little bit of that in Brian Daboll's offense this year. I really do. I really hope we do, because I don't want him to go for nothing. And I was actually very, very excited when the Bills were able to bring him in, reel him in from the Dolphins. They caught a fish, so to speak. So I'm really excited to see where we're at as far as, a few days before the draft. Guys that I tell people to follow, Chris Brown at BuffaloBills.com. He's guessed the Buffalo Bills first-round draft pick right, I believe, 3 of the last 4 years. Guessed EJ Manuel right. Guessed Shaq Lawson right. And that means something. Johnny G says, I believe the dismantling of the offensive line, a quarterback that is mobile might be the way to go. A mobile quarterback might be the way to go. Possibly. And mobility doesn't necessarily mean, Tyrod Taylor athleticism, obviously, as Johnny knows. It more so, to me, means a dude that can just extend plays, avoid a rush, and throw. That's what I think, real great mobility is. A guy that can avoid a rush and still get a pass off. That's what really the Sandlot type quarterbacks. That's what made Mike Vick so special. He could extend the play and find the open guy maybe 60 yards down the field and just chuck it like the ball was just a paperweight, and get the 6. That's what makes guys like him special, guys like Warren Moon special. There's a host of guys. Steve Young, Steve Young could do that too. Fran Tarkington, there's been so many. Cunningham, there's been a lot of guys that could do that. Even the Archie Mannings back in the day, the Staubachs, all those dudes could do that. They could chuck the ball down the field, avoid a rush, and chuck it, or run, tuck it, and run. Maybe that's the route they go. Maybe they go after a guy like Mason Rudolph, who has some mobility, or a Josh Allen, who has some mobility, or obviously a Lamar Jackson, who has a load of mobility, can really avoid tackles really well, can really secure the ball. I've actually never seen Lamar Jackson fumble as a quarterback. Maybe I missed it, but I know I haven't seen it. So, there are a lot of different directions that this team can go in on draft day, and that's what makes this so exciting. That's what makes this so much fun, and I've really enjoyed covering it for everybody. The 32 picks in 32 days will be back on Saturday afternoon at 2, and then obviously Sunday night at 7. I'll be back on to talk the next 32 picks. Don't forget, we're on the 10th, 11th, and 12th pick in the next episode. So I'm going to be giving my mock pick as to who I believe the Buffalo Bills will take. 10th, I believe, is the Oakland Raiders. 11th is the Miami Dolphins, and then Buffalo at 12, which, if we just go by that order, Buffalo at 12, Miami at 11. Miami's not dead set with Ryan Tannehill. I don't care what anybody says. He's had a knee injury, a freak knee injury, multiple knee injuries. Is he their guy? Who really knows at this point? But I don't think they do, and that's why they might reach to take a quarterback and spice things up a bit. Buffalo, to me, if fans want to talk about, and I love every one of you guys in Bills Mafia, if fans want to talk about trading up, they have to understand who they can't trade up with. And obviously 5th with Denver, 6th with Indy. Those are some spots. 2, obviously, with the Giants is another spot, but that's a spot that's an obvious spot due to the fact that the Jets moved up to 3. Dave Gettleman is the former Panthers GM, worked with Brandon Beane, who's the current Buffalo Bills GM. Gettleman's obviously the GM of the New York Giants now. So there's familiarity with those two, which is why that deal could get done. But 5th with Denver, 6th with the Colts. The Colts are terrible. They know it. They know they need picks. That might be a situation. 9 might be a situation with the San Francisco 49ers. So to say the least, there's a lot of different trade destinations. Fans just got to understand which ones actually make sense. I saw a fan the other day say, well, we should trade up to 3. Guy, the Jets got that pick. They're not trading it. So maybe to trade up to 1 or to 2, but if they really want to be, the Chicago Bears of the draft last year, if they really want to be that team, they might make that move. But other than that, that move ain't happening, buddy. So I don't know what to tell you. I actually got that written to me as a mailbag question. I thought it was a joke. And I asked him, I was like, did you know the Jets had that pick? Oh, no, I didn't. Come on, guys, keep up. Keep up. Don't trip. So I think that this is a very fun time of the year, talking about this draft, and it's my favorite time of the year. I love this more than the Super Bowl, to be quite honest with you. And I think that we're going to find out. We're going to find out, fans, whether we want to trade up or not. Some people do, some people don't. I understand why they should trade up. I get it, why Bills fans want them to trade up, but that doesn't mean that they will, because they have a lot of other needs. I'm Ryan Thomas of the Thomas Take Sports Podcast, obviously. Teespring.com, Thomas Take mugs. This front is blue, royal blue for Buffalo. The back, obviously, one Buffalo. Thomas Take Sports Podcast. Obviously, I've been repping Buffalo since the day I was born, and that's going to continue. So take care, everybody. Thank you for tuning in. As always, I enjoyed talking with each and every one of you, as well as, answering some of the mailbag questions, as well as chatting it up with Johnny Goldsmith. Take care.